Morning, Year 5. I hope you're all okay and you're having a super duper day. I hope you've had a lovely half term. You're feeling well rested and you're ready for a brand new half term of learning. Okay, we are kicking it off with our brand new text today. Now, hopefully, you've already started to have a bit of a wonder, to start to think curiously about our new text that we are going to be learning about this half term. Because yesterday we had a little bit of a visitor in the Year 5 classrooms. Okay, so I'm wondering if you have any kind of thoughts or predictions about who that visitor might be, okay, and why they might have been there. So hopefully you've already got your brains working a little bit. We're going to get our brains working a little bit more, okay, by looking at a few pictures which might give us a few more clues as to what our story is going to be about this half term. Okay, here we go then. What we're going to do before we get started is we're going to have a look at two different pictures, and they're both going to kind of give you a little bit of an idea, a little bit of kind of evidence for what our text might be about. Okay, now some of you might already have a good idea of what our text is about. Some of you might not. That's okay. Okay, I want you to have a look at these pictures, okay, and think about what they are telling us about our text. Pick out the evidence from the picture, okay, to justify your thinking. So I want you to pause the video now for me and have a little look. What can you see and what does this tell us about our text? Okay, hopefully then you've paused the video. Now, when I look at this picture, the first thing I see is that everything is kind of floating around in the air. That tells me that there isn't kind of the same gravity that we have in Earth that pulls us all down to the Earth, because everything's kind of floating about. That might tell me that we're in on maybe a different planet or maybe a different world, okay, where the forces don't work in quite the same way. I can also see that everything's kind of warped and twisted, isn't it? Okay, almost like it's being kind of sucked into a black hole. Okay, so maybe it could be something to do with that. I can see all the furniture is floating around. I can see playing cards. I can see armchairs. I can see bookshelves and bookcases. I can see this clock here as well. Okay, I can see this girl in the middle. Now, I recognise this blue dress that I can see, and I wonder if you do too. So I'm wondering if this girl who's wearing our blue dress, okay, might be part of our story. This girl is also kind of split in two, isn't she? I can see another character here wearing a red dress, okay? So maybe there's another character in our book as well that might wear a red dress, okay? So there's lots and lots going on in this picture, okay? You might have picked out the same things as me. You might have picked out very different things to me. That's okay. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, what do you think of this one then? What can you see and what does it tell us about our text? Okay, hopefully you've had a little think. Okay, so straight away I can see these characters, and these characters, their bodies are made out of playing cards, and then their heads are kind of shaped like their playing card as well, aren't they? Okay, so that tells me this world is kind of a bit magical, a bit different. We've got these kind of people that look a bit different to how humans might look. Okay, I can also see I've got kind of the lawn and the trees are kind of perfectly manicured, aren't they? The trees are perfect circles and the lawn is like a perfect chessboard as well. Okay, so that again is a little bit different to how our world looks, tells me it's a bit different to our world. I can see a castle, maybe someone who's very important lives in the castle, maybe someone who's royal might live in the castle. Okay, so that might tell me that there's someone, a member of royalty in our story. Okay, so there's lots and lots to think about. I can also see these giant toadstools as well, again telling me this world is a little bit magical, a little bit different. There's lots and lots that we can start thinking about with our story, okay? And hopefully, well, I guess some of you might be able to tell me what our story is. If you are still not sure, you might not have heard this story before, that's okay. But our story this half term that I am very, very excited to teach with you, because it's kind of one of my favourite stories as well, is Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Okay, now this story you might have seen as a film rather than as a story. So you might have seen the original film, which came out quite a long time ago, or you might have seen the more recent film, or you may have read the book. Okay. However, if this story is completely new to you, that's okay as well, okay, because we're obviously going to be reading and exploring it together as a class. Okay, so I'm super duper excited about this story, because this story, if I could describe it in one word without kind of ruining anything, and probably you might already be thinking this word anyway, it's quite wacky. Okay, there's lots and lots of things that go on in this story that might make you feel a little bit confused, that might make you feel a bit curious, okay, but that's kind of the point, okay, which I kind of like. So we're going to be exploring this book together this half term. So what are we going to do today then? We're going to be looking at our first chapter. And using this first chapter, we're going to be having a go at creating a flowchart to demonstrate the different events. Okay, we're going to practice new learning so that we can summarise this first chapter. And this is really going to help us to kind of get our head around what's happening in this story, because there's quite a lot happens in this story. Okay, there's quite a lot that we need to get our heads around, because like I said, it is a little bit wacky. So in order to help us kind of get our heads around what happens in this story and to help us kind of visualise what's happening, we're going to read a bit and then we're going to watch a bit. Okay, I quite like doing this. This kind of gives me opportunity for me to visualise what's happening, and then it kind of gives me opportunity to see how someone else might visualise it or see how it's been portrayed in the film. Okay, just before we kind of do this though, obviously how you visualise a book is completely kind of right for you. Okay, so if you watch the movie, if you watch the clip from the movie and you think, oh, that's different to how I visualised it, that's completely okay as well. We're just going to watch the clips to kind of help us get a better idea of what's happening to them. So we're going to make a start. Obviously, you don't have yet your Alice in Wonderland books because you're going to be coming to pick them up for your collection resource. However, so I'm going to read it today. However, they are really, really lovely books, so you need to make sure you come and collect these, please, when you have your collection resource. Or if you can't make it, you need to message us and just let us know, and we'll organise another time for you to collect them, because it's going to be really important that you have your books for your learning at home. So for today, I'm going to read, and we're going to start with chapter 1, which is called Down the Rabbit Hole. And in this book, we also have some nice little pictures as well, which help us to visualise what's happening. And you might recognise, I'm just going to make my a little bit bigger. You might recognise this character here. Okay, I wonder if you might recognise him. So, chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole. Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversations? So she was considering in her own mind, as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think of it very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, oh dear, I shall be too late. When she thought it over afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it and then hurried on, Alice started to her feet, for it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it. And burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it, and fortunately was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. Okay, so we're going to pause there for now. Okay, and hopefully in our book you've already started to notice that our book is a little bit different to the books that we've read previously as a class. Okay, I wonder what you've noticed about it. Is there anything in particular that you can pick out? Have a little think. Okay. Then, I know I've only read a little bit. You might have noticed that the language in this book is quite formal, okay, and quite kind of old-fashioned. That's because this book is quite an old text, okay? It was written quite a long time ago, so the language naturally is quite old-fashioned and quite different. So, for example, there was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think very much of it. Did Alice think it very much out of the way? Okay, they've used that contraction there, nor, which is one of our fanboys, but we don't use it very often because it's quite old-fashioned, isn't it? It sounds kind of quite fancy and quite posh. Okay, we've also got some kind of a more kind of formal old-fashioned vocabulary like remarkable and curiosity. And Alice started to her feet. Okay, we probably wouldn't say Alice started to her feet, we'd probably say Alice got to her feet. Okay, so the language already, you can see, is quite different. Also got quite interesting sentence structure. Now, it's quite difficult for you to kind of hear this because I have to take a breath in between the sentences, even though it doesn't necessarily give you opportunity. But I'd just like to show you in our Alice in Wonderland book, all of this in between my two fingers is one sentence. Okay, so we'll kind of discover this more as we read on. But Lewis Carroll likes to use these really, really long sentences, okay, with lots of kind of different structures, lots of conjunctions as part of them, lots of different clauses, okay, to really kind of get the reader on this kind of trail of thought about what's happening. Okay, now if you were to write a sentence this long, me or Miss Tyson would probably send you back and tell you to add some capital letters and some full stops. Okay, but it is really interesting to see how Lewis Carroll kind of uses these very long and windy sentences to kind of take us on a story with him. Okay, so our text is quite different to any text that we've done before. What we're going to do now is we're just going to watch a little bit of our video. Oops, I need to share the screen. There it is. Might work. Fab. Hopefully we can see it and we can also hear it as well now. Okay, and we're going to pause there before we move on, and we're going to have a little think about what we have read so far. So let's go back to our slides. Wonderful. So we've talked a little bit about how our language is quite different. Now then, let's have a little think using some of our magnifiers about what we already know. So using our inference illuminator, okay, what type of person do we think Alice is? Okay, and don't forget to tell me why. So just be thinking in your head, you don't need to write it down, okay? What type of person is she and why? What evidence have you got to support your point? Wonderful. Right, hopefully you've had a little think about that. Now, obviously, usually we'd have a discussion about this in class. However, obviously we can't do that. So we're going to go for the second best option. I'm going to share my ideas with you, and hopefully you might have had kind of similar ideas, or if you didn't have similar ideas, okay, that's also absolutely brilliant that you've had your own ideas, okay, and you can kind of reflect on my ideas and your ideas as well. So what type of person do we think Alice is? Well, I think Alice is quite a curious person, okay, and I think this because she's followed the rabbit and now she is peering into the hole because she wants to find out more. Okay, so I've told you that I think Alice is curious, and I've also used that word because to tell you why I think that I've used that evidence. Okay, so well done if you've also come up with an inference about Alice. Wonderful. Predictor magnifier there, what do you think will happen next? And don't forget to tell me why. Pause the video and have a little think. Okay, so I'm going to share my ideas now with you then. Using my predictor magnifier, I'm thinking about what's going to be happening next. Well, I can see that Alice is kind of peering quite deep into this hole, okay? So I'm thinking maybe, and I can also hear that suspense music in the video. Obviously, I can't hear that in the text, okay? But that's, again, informing me about what might happen. So I'm thinking that maybe Alice might fall into the hole because she's peering into it. The other reason why I think Alice might fall into the hole is because our text is called Alice in Wonderland. So that's telling me Alice is probably going to go to another land, okay? And I'm thinking this rabbit hole might be the way that she gets there, okay? So I think that Alice might fall down the hole because the story is about her going to another land. Okay, so well done if you came with a prediction and you also gave me a reason why. But we're going to read a little bit more. I'm just going to pause. Wonderful. So we're going to read on still in chapter 1. In another moment, Alice went down after it, never once considering how in the world she was to get out again. If you predicted that she fell down the hole, then she went down the hole. You were correct. The rabbit hole went straight on like a tunnel for some way, and then dipped suddenly down. So suddenly that Alice had not a moment to think about stopping herself before she found herself falling down a very deep well. Either the well was very deep or she fell very slowly, for she had plenty of time as she went down to look about her and to wonder what was going to happen next. First, she tried to look down and make out what she was coming to, but it was too dark to see anything. Then she looked at the sides of the well and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there she saw maps and pictures hung upon the pegs. She took down a jar from one of the shelves as she passed it. It was labelled orange marmalade, but to her great disappointment, it was empty. She did not like to drop the jar for fear of killing somebody, so managed to put it on one of the cupboards as she fell past. Well, thought Alice to herself, after such a fall as this, I shall think nothing of tumbling downstairs. How brave they'll all think of me at home. Why, I wouldn't say anything about it, even if I fell off the top of the house, which is very likely true. Here, what strikes me is Alice doesn't really seem scared about falling down the hole. She seems more kind of impressed at herself. And she's kind of thinking about how everyone else will be super impressed. Okay, so that tells me a little bit more about Alice's character. Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? I wonder how many miles I've fallen by this time, she said. I must be getting somewhere near the centre of the earth. Let me see. What would be 4,000 miles down, I think? But you see, Alice had learnt several things of this sort in her lessons in the schoolroom, and though this was not a very good opportunity for showing off her knowledge, as there was no one to listen to her, still, it was good practice to say it over. Yes, that's about the right distance, but then I wonder what latitude or longitude I've got. Alice had no idea what latitude or longitude was, or longitude either, but thought they were nice grand words to say. Okay, so now Alice is having a little chat in her mind. She's thinking about her geography knowledge and her science knowledge. Okay, so she doesn't really know what latitude or longitude means, but she feels quite kind of fancy and clever when she says them. Presently, she began again. I wonder if I should fall right through the earth. How funny it'll seem to come out among the people that walk with their heads downwards. The antipathies, I think. She was rather glad there was no one listening this time, as it didn't sound at all the right word. But I shall have to ask them what the name of the country is, you know. Please, ma'am, is this New Zealand or Australia? And she tried to curtsy as she spoke. Fancy curtsying as you're falling through the air. Do you ever think you could manage it? And what an ignorant little girl she'll think me. No, it'll never do to ask. Perhaps I shall see it written up somewhere. Okay, so again now, Alice is kind of having this little conversation with herself in her mind. Okay, and it might seem a little bit like she's going off on a little bit of a tangent, isn't she? She's kind of waffling along to herself, which is why our book can make us feel a little bit kind of lost sometimes. Sometimes we're like, what is Alice thinking about now? What's she talking about? Okay, but that's just kind of Alice. That's kind of the style. And she has these kind of trails of thought, and we kind of go along these trails of thought with her as well. So let's carry on. Down, down, down. There was nothing else to do, so Alice soon began talking again. Dina will miss me very much tonight, I should think. Dina was the cat. I hope they'll remember her saucer of milk at tea time. Dina, my dear, I wish you were down here with me. There are no mice in the air, I'm afraid, but you might catch a bat, and that's very like a mouse, you know. But do cats eat bats, I wonder? And here Alice began to get rather sleepy, and went on saying to herself in a dreamy sort of way, do cats eat bats? Do cats eat bats? And sometimes, do bats eat cats? For you see, as she couldn't answer either question, it didn't much matter which way she put it. She felt that she was dozing off, and that she had just begun to dream that she was walking hand in hand with Dina, and saying to her very earnestly, Now, Dina, tell me the truth. Did you ever eat a bat? Then suddenly, thump, thump, down she came upon a heap of dry leaves, and the fall was over. Okay, so Alice has made it all the way to the bottom of the rabbit hole. Okay, she's landed at the bottom. Now, we kind of got a little bit of a kind of description of all of Alice's thoughts and feelings as she was falling down the hole. Okay, and we've started to build a bit more of a picture of that in our minds of what Alice is like as a person as well. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to watch a little bit more of the clip. Show us what's happened to Alice next. So. Hello. Okay, so there we can see then Alice saw lots of things quite similar. Obviously, it's not completely the same as the book, but quite similar to what she saw while she was travelling down in the book as well. Okay, so she could see that furniture. She could see a piano that was actually being played by someone, but we couldn't see their hands. Okay, she could see the bed that she landed on for a few moments. Okay, so lots and lots of similarities there, and lots of things that Alice saw when she was falling down that you probably wouldn't really expect to see down a rabbit hole. Okay, so we're going to read on a little bit more now then to the end of chapter 1. Alice was not a bit hurt, and she jumped up onto her feet in a moment. She looked up, but it was all dark overhead. Before her was another long passage, and the white rabbit was still in sight, hurrying down it. There was not a moment to be lost. Away went Alice like the wind, and was just in time to hear it say as it turned another corner, "Oh, my ears and my whiskers, how late it's getting!" She was close behind it when she turned the corner, but the rabbit was no longer to be seen. She found herself in a long, low hall, which was lit up by a row of lamps hanging from the roof. There were doors all around the hall, but they were all locked, and when Alice had been all the way down one side and up the other, trying every door, she walked sadly down the middle, wondering how she was ever to get out again. Okay, so hopefully now you are visualising in your mind where Alice is. So she's in a long, dark hall that has quite a low ceiling. Okay, there's doors all around the hall, but all of them are locked. Okay, so hopefully you're beginning to create that picture of where Alice is. Suddenly, she came upon a little three-legged table, all made of solid glass. There was nothing on it except a tiny golden key, and Alice's first thought was that it might belong to one of the doors of the hall. But alas, either the locks were too large or the key was too small, but at any rate it would not open any of them. However, the second time round she came upon a low curtain she had not noticed before, and behind it was a little door about 15 inches high. She tried the little golden key in the lock, and to her great delight, it fitted. Alice opened the door and found that it led into a small passage, not much larger than a rat hole. She knelt down and looked along the passage into the loveliest garden you ever saw. How she longed to get out of the dark hall and wander out among those beds of bright flowers and those cool fountains. But she could not even get her head through the doorway. And even if my head would go through, thought poor Alice, it'd be very little use without my shoulders. Oh, how I wish I could shut up like a telescope. I think I could if only I knew how to begin. For you see, so many out-of-the-way things had happened lately that Alice had begun to think that very few things, indeed, were really impossible. Okay, so Alice is thinking, so many crazy things have happened to me already today. I could actually become so small to fit through the little tiny door. There seemed to be no use in waiting by the little door, so she went back to the table, half hoping she might find another key on it, or at any rate a book of rules for shutting people up like telescopes. This time she found a little bottle on it, which certainly was not here before, said Alice, and round its neck a paper label with the words, "Drink me," beautifully printed on large letters. It was all very well to say "drink me," but the wise little Alice was not going to do that in a hurry. No, "I'll look first," she said, "and see whether it's marked poison or not." For she had read several nice little histories about children who had got burnt and eaten up by wild beasts, and many other unpleasant things, all because they would not remember the simple rules their friends had taught them, such that a red-hot poker will burn you if you hold it too long, and that if you cut your finger very deeply with a knife, it usually bleeds. And she had forgotten that if you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certain to disagree with you sooner or later. However, this bottle was not marked poison, so Alice ventured to taste it, and finding it very nice, it had in fact a sort of mixed flavour of cherry tart, custard, pineapple, roast turkey, toffee, and hot buttered toast. She very soon finished it off. Okay, so Alice has decided that because this bottle doesn't say poison on it, she's using her common sense, it's probably okay to drink. And actually, she said it sounds quite yummy to me. Okay, so let's see what happens now Alice has drank the drink. "What a curious feeling," said Alice. "I must be shutting up like a telescope." And so it was indeed. She was now only 10 inches high, and her face brightened up at the thought that she was now the right size for going through the little door into that lovely garden. First, however, she waited for a few minutes to see if she was going to shrink any further. She felt a little nervous about this, for it might end, you know, said Alice, in my going out altogether, like a candle. I wonder what I should be like then. And she tried to fancy what the flame of a candle is like after it's blown out, for all she could not remember ever having seen such a thing. After a while, finding that nothing more happened, she decided on going into the garden at once. But alas, for poor Alice! When she got to the door, she found that she had forgotten the little golden key, and when she went back to the table for it, she found she could not possibly reach it. She could see it quite plainly through the glass, and she tried her best to climb up one of the table legs, but it was too slippery, and when she had tired herself out with trying, the poor little thing sat down and cried. Okay, so Alice has now made herself so small by drinking the potion, she can now get through the door, but she's left the key on the table, so she can't unlock the door anymore. So she's got a little bit of a problem. Come, there's no use in crying like that, said Alice to herself, rather sharply. I advise you to leave off this minute. She generally gave herself very good advice, though she very seldom followed it. That word seldom is quite old-fashioned, it means rarely. And sometimes she scolded herself so severely as to bring tears into her eyes. And once she remembered trying to box her own ears for having cheated herself in a game of croquet she was playing against herself. But this curious child was very fond of pretending to be two people. But it's no use now, thought poor Alice, to pretend to be two people. Why, there's hardly enough of me left to make one respectable person. Soon her eye fell on a little glass box that was lying under the table. She opened it and found in it a very small cake, on which the words "Eat me" were beautifully marked in currants. Well, I'll eat it, said Alice, and if it makes me larger, I can reach the key, and if it makes me smaller, I can creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden. I don't care what happens. She ate a little bit and said anxiously to herself, which way, holding her hand on the top of her head to feel which way it was growing. She was quite surprised to find that she remained the same size. To be sure, which generally happens when one eats cake, but Alice had got so much into the way of expecting things, but out of the way things to happen. Expecting nothing but out of the way things to happen. But it seemed quite dull and stupid for life to go in the common way. So she set to work and very soon finished off the cake. Okay, and now we can see, I'm just going to show you a little sneak peek into the next chapter. The next chapter we can see a picture of Alice, which makes us feel a bit curious as to what has happened to her now that she has eaten the cake. So, using that knowledge then, using our retrieval, what happened to Alice when she drank the potion? And then what about when she ate the cake? What do you think is going to happen? Hopefully you remembered that when Alice drank the potion, she shrunk down so small so that she could fit through the door, but she could no longer reach the key. Okay, but then when she ate the cake, she started to think that maybe she might be getting bigger. She was feeling the top of her head, wondering if her head was going to get smaller or whether she was going to grow and get bigger. Okay, and we can see on the next page that clue. She's going to get bigger when she eats the cake. Okay. What we're going to do now then is we have read chapter 1 together. Now, a lot happened in chapter 1. Okay, so now we are going to have a go at using a flowchart to kind of summarise that chapter. Why do we think then it might help us to use flowcharts? Have a little think at home first, and then I'm going to tell you why I like to use flowcharts. Okay, so why do we use flowcharts then? Well, we use them to organise information. So a lot has happened, like I just said in our chapter. Okay, and we can use this flow map or this flowchart, okay, to kind of help us organise it, to split it up into different events so that we can kind of see a clearer picture of what happened. We can use it to summarise. So summarising is kind of talking about the main events, the key events, picking out the key events from a chapter. Okay, so we can use it to summarise by picking out those key events and writing them on the flowcharts. And we can also use them to help plan our own writing. So by the end of the week, we're going to be having a go at rewriting this chapter from a different perspective. And having this flowchart is really going to help us because we can see really clearly the key things that happened. Okay, so what we're going to have a go at doing now, then our final task for today is to use a flow map, okay, to summarise chapter 1. Okay, so you need to think about what happened in chapter 1, and you have got 4 events, okay, that you can kind of split it into. So I'll go first then, I'll do just kind of the first one. Now I've got this flowchart which you can use, or you can just draw your own on paper, it's up to you. If you are drawing it on paper, just make sure that you're using a ruler, okay, to make sure that your lines are nice and straight and nice and neat, and all your boxes are the same size. I'm thinking about event 1. Let me think about what happened right at the start of my story. Well, and I only want kind of a few key points. I don't want loads of notes. Let me just make my writing a bit bigger. So Alice spotted a white rabbit who could speak and was, I'll make this smaller in a second, wearing a, she followed him to a, okay, so there you can see then that's my first kind of event. Okay, I'm not giving you lots and lots of details. I'm not telling you about how Alice was reading a book or that she was bored or what the rabbit said. I'm just saying she spotted a white rabbit who could speak and was wearing a waistcoat. Now, the reason why I've included that he could speak and was wearing a waistcoat is because I think these are quite important details of what happened. Okay, spotting a white rabbit that's just kind of a normal wild rabbit hopping across the garden is very different to spotting a rabbit that, 1, I can hear talking, and 2, is wearing a waistcoat and has also got a watch as well. Okay, that's an important detail. She followed into the rabbit hole is kind of what happened when she spotted the rabbit. Okay, so you need to then be thinking about what are your next 3 events going to be? What happened next? Okay, what happened when she got to the bottom of the rabbit hole? What happened when she was in the hall at the bottom? Okay, you're going to have a go at summarising using 4 events to summarise chapter 1. So you can use the same start point as me if you wish, okay, or you can write a slightly different one, and then you are going to do your next 3 events. Now, it's really important that you don't write loads and loads. So when you are writing about your when you're writing in each box, you need to be thinking, what key information does the reader really need to know? Okay, what do I really need to remember? And what information can I leave out? Do I need to know that Alice saw a jar of orange marmalade on her way down? Probably not. Okay, so that's going to be your task for today. I hope that you're excited about doing Alice in Wonderland with us. I'm super duper excited to kind of explore the rest of our text as it gets more and more wacky, more and more crazy. Okay, make sure once you've had a go at doing your summarising flow map, you have sent a picture and you have took a picture and you have uploaded it onto your portfolios so we can see how you have done at kind of understanding this first chapter as well. Okay, that's going to be everything from me today, and I will see you tomorrow for another lesson. Goodbye.